I'm Gene Ovanik, for those of you who don't know who I am. I've been a farrier, or trying to be a farrier, for half a century, a half a decade and change, and I hope before I die I get it figured out. But the thing that has been the best thing in my life in the last several years is the ability to kind of see into a lameness issue a little before it really gets to be a catastrophic thing. And it's about having a crystal ball. And I think everybody would like to have a crystal ball and look at that and say, I see something coming here, and if I know how to deter it, can I, and how would I go about it? And so I'm going to talk to you about that today and give you my crystal ball and how it's helped me, and hopefully, well, I'm sure it'll help you as it has for a lot of others. But the thing is that we've evolved in the last couple of hundred years in our hoof preparation, and we have come to realize that if we can prepare the foot and place a shoe somewhere around the middle of it, that it's as good of a foot prep that we can. And I think most everybody agrees that's a good basic standard. But for those horses that have to turn corners, and particularly challenging corners with dragging a steer and repetitively, mind you, these horses go one direction only, and so they have a job-related injury that seems to be consistent. And of the horses that I work on, they injure the same things. They all kind of are confronted with that same element. And and the other horses in this industry, hunters and jumpers and barrel racers, and the list goes on and on. We don't take our horses in a straight line except for endurance horses anymore and pleasure horses. We turn corners with them, and we ask them to turn corners faster than the next guy because there's money at stake or ribbons at stake and the likes of that. So these horses are challenged in their joints, and to be honest with you, the horse's anatomy is not designed to take that. And for the early 50 years of my life, we didn't have MRIs, ultrasound. It wasn't even in the mix of things. And the radiographs were so poor you couldn't read anything from them, just at best. All of that stuff has helped us now to get to a new level of understanding of what really is going on inside of these feet. So I think it's time for us to take a shift in our paradigm to look at footwear and see how it can be, and it possibly is, responsible for part of these injuries, because people are not going to change the activities that they do. So I think it's our job as farriers and innovators to look at what's going on and how we can help with that. These are the parts of the limb that are generally seen by MRIs that are injured, and we try to maintain them, try to help them with PRP and IRAP and things like that, and OSFOS. But none of that is as successful as I think it can be. And unless you can unload those lesions or put together a good rehab program. The deep flexor tendon is the largest attachment in the distal limb, and so Mother Nature designed it that way because that's where the most stress occurs. It's over the top of the navicular bone, and so most of the innovations that have been done recently, and as far as manufactured shoes, is to sort of roll the toe to make it easier for that horse to do it. And hooray, it seems to be working. The most important thing is to get the foot prepped, get the shoe in the right spot so that can happen optimally. But the thing that we've discovered over the years is that in treating lame horses, particularly with deep flexor lesions and navicular related things, that an aluminum shoe that will wear some has been real helpful, especially if it starts with a bit of a roll to begin with. And the thing that we experience time and time and time again is that at the end of this shoeing period, when that shoe is nearly ready to break, they perform better. Well, that opened the door to, well, do they need that much front of their foot in cases where lameness is there? Or can you back that shoe up to a point and actually treat that lameness? Those are questions that we had that we needed to pursue. And so it's been a progressive thing over the last several years to be able to advance into that element of treatment and prevention. And we look at these things all the time. I circle nearly every horse, and for sure every new horse that I shoe, and because I treat mostly lame horses now, that's what I do. So the thing that we look at here is where the ground contacts, the forces that are incurred on it, and the results of that ground contact. So if you look at what goes on, now granted, most arena surfaces have some forgiveness to them, so we take that into consideration. But on a hard surface, you diagnose a lameness on a horse on a hard surface because of that. And you can see those things occurring. The thing that I look at is that point of contact right there. And that's the part that's often overlooked, because that's when the forces are the greatest on the coffin joint. The medial collateral ligament and the suspensory ligament to the navicular bone are in jeopardy through this range of motion there. So looking at this model here, you see the deep flexors in taking the extreme hit, the suspensory ligaments to the navicular bone, but when they turn the corner, there's little forgiveness to the coffin joint. And the suspensory ligaments to the navicular bone are those two major components that have to yield to that. You've seen radiographically spurs on the navicular bone. Those are avulsions of that ligament where the strain has been so great. So there's complications that result after that. So now that we have imagery to look at these things, we're able to see the picture clearer. And so several years ago, we started looking at if we could ask a horse the question, where do you hurt and what can we do about it? We developed this system. There's 4 sizes. They fit the foot, and they have to be specific because in order to evaluate the connective tissue around that joint and the pastern, the center, the pivot point has to be in the center of things. So that's why they're designed with 4 of them in mind. And I'll show you, go through the system with you and how it works, and then I'll show you a case or 2 afterwards and the results that we get with this. With being able to use this and how to apply it to the shoes. So we ask the horse for a baseline, and that means lifting the foot, bear weight on the testing foot, and how easily they pick it up or how quickly they put it back down. And the whole test evolves around their willingness to pick up this foot and stand on it. And so it's a very simple thing, but it has a little bit of a learning curve to it. We know kind of where the center of the foot is, so the boot is designed to fit in that center so that it will be able to get equal evaluation of everything around it. We place the foot in the heel lift position. Now that wedge is a very specific thickness so that it will not over-challenge the joints, but it will challenge it enough that if there's something tweaked or something sore, they'll be able to respond accordingly. So we pick up the other foot, and how quickly they pick it up and how fast they put it down is how we monitor those things. Okay? We move it then to the opposite side of that position, to the toe. That's why it's called a cross-check. So you move it from one position across to it so you can cross-reference that. So you place the foot back on the ground, and now we're really stretching the deep flexor tendon and some of the apparatus in that area. And if they're reluctant to pick the foot up, then you score it on a scale of 1 to 3 and get the information from that. Now, if you get all through with the whole cycle of things, you have a roadmap to kind of guide you as to what modifications you can make to the shoe. And that's the whole thing, is to be able to use this information, make modifications to a shoe, a clog, or whatever to accommodate them in their activities. Because what we're doing is we're replicating or duplicating what goes on out in the real world. This strain at the point of breakover, and in the heel lift position, it's generally involved in heel contact in ground engagement. So ask them, move it to the lateral side, And what we're challenging here are the connective tissues on the medial side of the foot. We're lifting the lateral side, challenging, stretching, compressing tissue on this side here. And we're not here to diagnose, and it's not a diagnostic tool, but it's helpful in the field to be able to sort out injuries or possibilities of things, but long before they become catastrophic. So we go through the whole thing, cross-reference to the other side, and if they're sore lifting when the wedge is on the outside and they're comfortable on the inside, that's information that you can modify shoes with and deal with. So we go around the whole gamut of things, and there's a chart that's set up so that when you get a score, you put it in there, and when you get all done, you have 2 minuses over here, 2 pluses over here, and zeros here and here, and now you say, wow, if I lift the inside and he's comfortable, do I put a wedge on that side only? I mean, it would seem logical, and don't think we haven't done it, and we've done it a lot, but it only lasts for a short period of time. It gives them temporary relief. What we've discovered is that instead of lifting the side that is indicated, we reduce the ground surface on the side that is giving us the discomfort. Do you see what I mean? We're keeping the whole ground surface flat, but we're in areas where lifting the lateral side, it says, ouch, that hurts, replicating the turn in the circle. So we just reduce that, bring that edge in, make it easier for them to go to that area. And I'll show you what that involves. These are the areas that we're testing. And we go back to looking at this particular shoe and say, well, if we can bring that area back, as we saw earlier, then the horse got better. Can it work around the corner? And so, yes, that's what we've done. We modified, that's a good shoe because the outer edge is approximately 3/4 of an inch or a little more. And if we can reduce that edge even more, then getting relief to that foot in the turn has been highly beneficial. I can share with you lots of stories, and I'll be glad to do so at the booth if you decide to stop by, because the experiences that I have with this whole system of being able to look at lameness a little differently and be able to do something about it. So the challenges that this horse incurs in the circle are part of why we make these modifications, okay? We use a clog a lot of times for serious injuries, that horses that come to us that are lame, because we have found that reducing the ground surface in certain areas that we detect with the leverage testings, with the cross-check, we're able to bring that edge in farther than we ever thought. And that has made a tremendous difference with how we treat horses. And as we look at numbers that we've done, we see there's actually something positive going on in the form of healing over a period of 2 to 3 years, or even 1.5 years in many cases, if the condition is not excessive. Modifying the clog in that tape, just rasping it away, taking the front side off, removing the back side, and removing the front side in cases of ring bone. Because in a leverage test, you're going to find consistently with a high ring bone that they're not going to like to have the heel raised. And I can't tell you how many times I've been given a treatment package from a veterinarian who says, this horse got high ring bone, give them a wedge pad, and they don't like it. And yet I raise the toe, and they say, finally, they lift the other foot right away. And so you can ask the horse these questions if you're given a package to put on the horse, and if they don't like it, you need to find out why. And there's oftentimes more going on inside that foot. A lot of the horses have a navicular problem as well as ring bone. Now that gets a little bit tricky, but it can be sorted out with the leverage device. You can ask them where they hurt, where they don't, and then design a package to get them through most of their lameness issues. This ring bone thing is one of the most effective things that we've had. And I have to tell you, it's rewarding when you can take a horse that is so lame with ring bone that's been treated ineffectively, as I would have done years ago. But since I started asking them how they felt about it and being able to design things around that, Man, I'll tell you what, I've got a 24-year-old dressage horse that, and a 60-year-old lady that are the perfect match, but he's got bilateral ring bone and he's performing at a better level than he ever has just because of this. And it's entirely within the realm of possibility for any and everybody, because all you have to do is just ask the questions, pay attention to the information, and then have an idea of what you can do to prescribe, how you modify a shoe, clog, or whatever, and the world, it's unlimited. This is a fairly common package for horses with collateral ligament lesions and deep flexor lesions. This is a clog that we use on a horse that was at the national finals in 2010. He had a partial avulsion of the deep flexor tendon as well as the impar ligament. He has a cyst on his navicular bone, and when they got done with him after they forced him to perform, he came as non-weight bearing for several months, and finally after a period of time he started to be able to walk on that leg, and we got him a year later when he was somewhat mobile, and we started treating him. Now mind you, 2.5, 3 years later, we found this horse got so good. Now, when we first started treating him, you could not pick up the other foot. He would not stand on that. And after the second and third shoeing, he had repaired enough to be able to stand while we shod both feet. He wasn't sound, but he didn't know it. And we had him fooled. This is the horse 2 years ago competing at an ERA rodeo in Utah. And he's the head, and he's the horse on the head, right there. Now, you have to realize that the world's record is 3.2 seconds. If you pull that clog off of him, he's lame. Over the period of 2 to 3 years, he's getting better. We don't know where we're going. We have several handfuls of horses like this with that type of pathology that we're able to do this with. And if you'd have told me 10 years ago that putting them on that small a foundation, well-designed, well-structured, that I could do that, I would have said it's an unreasonable expectation. But the fact is that I'm not the only one that does it. I have a number of people who do those same things. It's a matter of being able to use that system to get information. With the help of your veterinarian, you can do unbelievable things, more than I'd ever thought. This is another horse that came to a barn that I work at, and he'd been sore on this knee for 5 or 6 years. He hobbled in there, and I watched him. He park his foot out here. He'd have to get off the other one. And then all of a sudden, he's like, for years he did that. Finally, after about 3 months, the lady asked me if I'd take a look at him. I leverage tested him, and all the years that I with these bow-legged knee things, and I put lateral extensions on him that didn't work. I'd put this extension, that extension. All of that garbage that is extensions were creating more of the problem. I leverage tested him, and I put him in that. And the minute I couldn't pick up the other foot for very long. He would not tolerate it. The minute I put this on his foot, he went over and picked up the other foot before I even got over there. And I shod the other foot, I turned him out, and he ran, bucked, played, and everybody in the barn was crying because they saw that poor horse stand there for all of those months and years with no help. And they said, is that as easy as it is? Well, it's not easy because we're taught that the bigger foot is the better foot. And for what our horses are doing today, we maybe need to think about that whole concept. And I can assure you that if you take a horse in a circle, this is how I do it, and hopefully it'll be of some help to you. I put all horses in a circle on hard ground, and if they won't give me their head to go to the inside of the circle, something's not quite right. Either they're not broke or they're lame. And if they carry their head to the lateral side way out here and you can't get them, and when you finally do, they bob their head. The owners will tell you that they aren't lame. They just are stiff on one side of the bridle. So they'll get a saddle fit, or they'll get this, or they'll get that. But if you could put a cross check on them, you'll find, because you're able to duplicate what's going on in that circle, you'll find that, yes, they're sore when they stand on that side of the foot, but the owners don't know it. And bless their hearts, they do their best in all of the things that are out there and available to them, and they don't see it. But that horse will tell you right away, if you raise the outside of his foot on the lateral side or the lateral toe, he won't want to pick up this other foot. You move it to the inside and he's got it up before you get there. Now, even Ray Charles can see that. So that is how easy it works. On those that are really lame, and then the owners just sit there, I can't believe. That's just like asking the horse where they hurt. Well, they do, and they'll tell you. Yes, sir. We have done leverage testing, and we've had some MRIs done, and the structures that we think that we're treating, we find are very damn close to the same. And mind you, we're not offering this as an MRI, but what we're doing is getting ahead of the curve. And I think that's the most valuable tool that you have, is if you see something, if one of the owners come to me and say, my horse is sticky, I don't know what, he's not as good as he has been, and we put him in this, and we can find a little ache or a pain, and if we treat it by modifying the shoe, clog, or whatever on the front end of that, we can avoid that event. And we've done it time and time again. I had a fella that wanted to buy a rope horse. His other horse broke down in the back, and he didn't have $25,000, $30,000 to do that, but he found a $20,000 horse that he really liked. And we put him in a circle, and man, he was head bobbing lame. And I said, we put him in the cross check, and he was really, really sore. But out there in the arena, he would cope, and he would rope. And he didn't complain loud enough to be heard, you see, but he did hear. He got the horse for $10,000. He came to me and he says, what do you think? I says, your last horse was lame, and we kept him going for years before he broke down in the back. So I said, I don't think there's a problem. He took the horse, bought him that day, saved $8,000 to $10,000. Brought him over, and we leverage tested him again, modified the shoes, and he trotted him in a circle, and he couldn't tell he was lame at all. Now, that's the kind of thing that you can do. I do more pre-purchase type things with this than I do anything. People want to buy a horse. I say, well, let's do it. Let's ask the horse if there's some issues. And so that's a really helpful tool in that respect. And so I'm offering you the exposure, and come by our booth over there, and we'll show you a lot of modifications that we've been very successful with. And on that, it'll show you kind of what the numbers are, and it's a great day when you can have success.